Good morning, friends, and welcome to Rhythm. This is week 2 in our Trash Talker series. Now, you may be wondering, aren't we talking about Scripture? But Scripture is full of confrontation, it's full of conflict, and it's full of conversation. And at the intersection of those things, you find trash talk. Today, you'll see that even Jesus himself engages in a little bit of trash talk. Welcome to Rhythm. Your stomach drops, your palms get a little bit sweaty, and your heart begins to beat a little bit faster because you find yourself in the middle of drama, of disagreement, of discord. All of us have been here, whether that drama, that disagreement, that discord is with a parent or with a friend or with a teacher or with a significant other. All of us as human beings have at some point found ourselves trying to navigate drama, disagreement, or discord. And because Jesus is God in human flesh, he is not immune to finding himself in the middle of drama, disagreement, or discord. In fact, during most of his ministry, Jesus finds himself in the middle of drama, disagreement, and discord. Throughout the Gospels, the stories of Jesus' life, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Jesus takes center stage, and more often than not, he is teaching or healing or performing some miracle. That's what's happening on center stage, but in the background lurks, more often than not, one particular group known as the Pharisees. Now, the Pharisees were a group of Jews, like a particular maybe denomination or a particular group of Jews that prided themselves on how strict they kept the Jewish law. So in the Old Testament, as I'm sure you know, particularly in Leviticus, God lays out all of these laws and rules to govern all kinds of aspects of life, what you can do, what you can eat, what you can wear. And the Pharisees made it a point, they took great pride in not only adhering to the law, but taking it to the next level. In a lot of ways, the Pharisees were the all-star Jews. Not all-stars in the level of connection they have with God, but all-stars in just how strict they kept the law. For example, in the Old Testament, there is a commandment that says, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Essentially, don't forget to take a day of rest. And so Pharisees would not only make sure that they took a day of rest, but they would limit even the amount of steps you could take on the Sabbath. So basically they counted their steps to make sure that they didn't go above and beyond that number of steps and therefore forget the Sabbath. They were all-stars about how strict they kept the Jewish law, and they were all-stars on how much they pushed others to have the same amount of strictness. And this, in particular, is what brought them into drama, disagreement, and discord with Jesus and his disciples. All throughout the gospel narratives, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, back and forth, Jesus and the Pharisees have drama, disagreement, and discord. Towards the end of Matthew's gospel, particularly in Matthew 23, there is this conflict. The conflict between Jesus and the Pharisees comes to a head. And throughout this chapter, Jesus says to the Pharisees over and over and over again, woe to you. Which is not something that you and I typically say to one another, but in this context, it is a condemnation, meaning like you are doing this wrong, and a caveat. It is a warning. It's a condemnation and a caveat. It is a rejection of how the Pharisees have done life. It is a rejection of how not only the Pharisees have come to understand who God is, but it is a rejection of how the Pharisees have pushed an incorrect God onto other people. Jesus over and over again says, "Woe to you," as caveat and as condemnation. He calls them this: "You blind guides, you hypocrites, you children of hell, you wicked, you brood of vipers, you snakes." There's so much trash talk in this chapter that it is hard to get your mind around it. It's hard to get a handle on just how much criticism, just how much trash talk God has for the Pharisees. But my absolute favorite moment of trash talk in this chapter is where Jesus calls the Pharisees whitewashed tombs. Let me read this to you. This is in Matthew 23, beginning in verse 27. Jesus says this: "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of dead men's bones and everything unclean. In the same way," verse 28, "on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness." How devastating is this trash talk? Back in the day, they typically did not bury the remains of those who had passed away. Instead, they would put the remains in a coffin, and then that coffin would go into a crypt. Now, sometimes that would be a cave, which is in the case of Lazarus and Jesus when he died. But in some cases, it would be a building. And if it was a building, that building, just like every other building in the desert, would need to have a certain level of upkeep. And one of the ways that they maintained those buildings was with a process called whitewashing. Now, whitewashing involved taking this mixture and sort of covering the building in it, and that mixture would all at once clean the surface, it would repaint the surface, and sort of like plaster would cover the cracks in the surface. And so the end result would be something that looked almost like a brand new building. But no amount of whitewash could change the reality of what was happening inside the crypt. Essentially, the outside of the crypt would be this gleaming, clean white, but the inside of the crypt would be death and decay. And if you were a Pharisee, defilement. They saw dead bodies and dead things in general as incredibly unclean. What would happen is you would have on the outside this gleaming structure and on the inside death and decay. And so there'd be this huge disconnect between the internal reality and the external reality. So when Jesus says to the Pharisees, "You are like whitewashed tombs," what he is accusing them of, what he is saying to them, is that who you are on the outside does not match who you are on the inside. There's a huge disconnect, you hypocrite. A disconnect between who you say you are and who you actually are. Jesus' warning to the Pharisees is by extension a warning to us as well. To not become so focused on what's happening out here that we neglect what's happening in here. To not whitewash the exterior and allow death to happen on the interior. We find ourselves right now in the midst of a special season of the Christian calendar, the season of Lent. And Lent is a unique opportunity each year to be honest about your internal reality and to connect honestly to God. It's a time where you can reflect on who you are and who you have become, and to do it in such a way that allows God to work in you in maybe a new way. And so we want to give you opportunity to do that. We want to give you a guide to do that. If you can maybe understand this as a guide to not being a hypocrite, a guide to taking care of the internal reality. In the comment section today, we're going to provide you a link to our Lenten reader. And this reader will take you through the remaining days of the season of Lent, leading up to Easter, the 40 days leading up to Easter, and hopefully guide you into realizations and revelations about what's happening in your internal spiritual life. We also hope that as you go through this, that you will be able to connect with God in a new way. Because the realizations and the revelations of what's happening internally doesn't lead to God's rejection. Instead, as we become honest with ourselves about where we are at, God embraces us. How do we stop being hypocrites? We commit consistently. And the Lenten reader will give you opportunity to do just that. You'll find a link to that in the comment section below this morning. Friends, thanks so much for being a part of Rhythm on YouTube this morning. I'm so grateful for you and the way that you are leaning in spite of all of the obstacles that we are bumping into. I do want to let you know that if in-person worship is an option for you, we are currently offering that both at 9:30 and the 11 o'clock hour. You do have to register and let us know that you are coming, but we'll put a link in the comments about how you can register for in-person worship. And we'll also have in-person small groups for our freshman and sophomore classes this afternoon in person at the Melrose campus. I hope to see you there, and I hope you have a great rest of the week.